Hey there. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the AI Playbook with 33A. I'm Elin Nicolau, co hosting this time with Mike Brand, CEO of 33A, and we're joined by Wido van Hemstra, AI strategist. Let's dive into it. Hey, Wido. Thank you for joining us today. I would love to talk to you about AI and the AI design sprint. So please tell us tell us about your story, how you came into the AI world, and how you found out about the AI design sprint.
Hi, Ellie. Hi, Mike. Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Hi.
Yeah, my name is Wido. I work for about now 11, 12, 13 years with data, analytics, and AI. So I've seen a lot of the topics. It used to be called big data before, and now we end up with AI. So I've seen a lot of different terms for the same technologies. At the moment, I'm working as a freelance AI enabler, which means to me there are a lot of companies in need for AI or needing a helping hand for their AI journey and their ambitions. And I think I can help them with my experience from the last 13 years. I also worked with a consulting company. I also worked in other organizations like banking and finance or marketing. So I've seen several topics there. And I also have worked in different roles like as data scientist, team lead, manager, etc. So I call myself a horizontal data scientist because I've seen from the infrastructure to implementation up to the strategy and the vision of the organization, all the topics. So that's how I actually got into data and AI in the end. That's an interesting topic and interesting use cases and a lot of challenges nowadays as well.
And yeah, how did you come to um, discover the AI design sprint?
Yeah, actually, my previous company, they merged with another company, and that's how we got into contact with one of the guys of the AI team. And they used the AI design sprint. And one of my tasks was also to think about a proposition, how we could help clients to figure out how we can solve challenges using AI in a better way. And we used to have a very simple process. And then we saw the AI design sprint, thought, okay, this is really great, and we can really reuse it. And helps a lot in the thinking of the organization, finding the challenges and formulating a concept that you can then test and assess. Uh, my company was more focused on the technical assessment of the use cases, so it was really an addition to what we had. And that's how I got introduced in the AI design sprint.
Hmm. And it looks like there is a huge shift coming with AI. What do you think businesses need to know to not stay behind? What do they need to do?
Yeah, that is a great question, and it's also a broad question because you see a lot of difference in the with organizations. So some are very hesitant in using AI; they are not that sure or accepting the technology. Others are really forward-thinking and innovative and using it as well. What I try to tell these companies always is AI is here to stay. It's not a hype. It's not a timely thing. It's here to stay. The only limiting factor is the adoption by humans, which means if you don't step up right now and try to play with AI, you are lacking behind. So business needs to be aware of that AI is going to change the world. It's also going to change their organization and processes. However, they need to be aware that the way it's changing is completely different than what you might see online. Most companies are not like the big tech companies we see. They are much smaller. They have different core processes, and there's a lot of compliance around AI and regulation around AI. So you need to take care of all these aspects, but you need to start learning and playing with AI. I think that's what I want organizations to realize. And that can be very small, but you need to be aware of the potential, but you also need to be knowledgeable about AI, not just using it as a tool. So it's a very complex topic. It's also a very complex change. I think much more complex than we realize. But I really encourage companies to start playing with AI, start finding out how it can benefit them.
hmm So how do you use the AI design sprint? Maybe you can tell a little bit how you use it.
Yeah, so I try to use it as most of the time as first as an introduction. That's how I try to highlight what are the aspects of the AI design sprint, because AI is a technology that frightens a lot of people. And I try to help them understand that this is a technology or a method that helps them creating the solutions from a business perspective. So not a technology driven solution, but a business perspective. But also that this framework addresses concerns about ethics, concerns about technology, like availability, readiness of the technology, but also what are we doing with the benefits? Are we laying people off, or are we reusing people in a different way? Or what can you do before you start implementing or building some new technology? And I think that helps them to be more relaxed about the AI shift. It's not about a technology push, it's more about a strategic mind shift that you need. Another term that you also hear about this is AI literacy. That's actually about being aware of what AI is capable of, but also being knowledgeable about the potential and being a critical thinker and questioning the technology. Is it helping me or not? And if you are able as an organization to ask these questions, then I think you really understand whether you choose AI to use it for your process or not, whether you will build it yourself or that you will buy it from outside. And these are all elements that are very relevant and important for the AI change in an organization. And I think that the AI design sprint is one of the driving factors that can help formulating the structure and the concepts that you want to play with.
Yeah, and if you take a step back, so what's maybe what do you like most about the AI design sprint? What's maybe some of the highlights?
Though there are a few. In general, I like the concept that the business is creating the solution themselves. So we are not formulating a solution and say, hey, we have a nice trick and we can show you some nice and cool things with AI. No, it's vice versa. It's actually the business thinks about their challenges and what can we do from a functional perspective, and then translate it into and what is the capability in AI. But I think that the most important part of the AI design sprint is, I think, the ethical framework that is implemented in the first phase, because that is where most companies struggle with. They have a lot of guidelines, lots of rules. They really don't understand how they will impact or affect them, but they need to think about it. And that's also why the success of implementing AI is dependent on. If you put that at the end of your process, most of the time you have something done that's not completely in line of the compliance or the guidelines, and so it will stop. So I think to have this thought about at the start of a project, I think that's very, very relevant. So I really like that aspect of the AI design sprint, and I also get back from clients that I really like that element. So the moment I start talking about the ethical framework that they check, then they step up and say, okay, that's interesting. Because most of the technology is for them something, most people bring it, but this is something really new, but also that's something that concerns them most.
Very cool,
So,
very cool.
There are many more points, but I think from a business, from a client perspective, the ethical part is most important. From the conceptual point, I think that the business is in charge, is in the driving seat for designing the AI solutions. I think is from a project perspective interesting. It helps them also to become an ambassador, to be involved in the project, and also to use it and accept and adopt the solution in the end. And that most of the time is one of the aspects that's overseen. So in the moment you start to implement, it's new technology and people don't trust AI and they are not involved in the project. So the acceptance is also very important. And that's what you get when you start at the front with the business in mind.
Great, yes. So then you kind of also answered already my next question was actually about, so one question was about like, what do you like about it? But what do the clients really like about the AI design sprint? But you a little bit answered it, but maybe you have something to add to it.
Of course, that's when they start with it. I think what I also like is that they are part of the journey. So that people can really speak out, what is my concern? What are my challenges? It's not always that easy. These are most of the time implicit things. Then when you start asking them about these questions, then they have to think about, and then they reiterate on it, or different people have different opinions about it. So it's not that explicit always. But I think that they are part of the AI journey is very relevant. However, I do see that there is a change also right now. So when we had the AI design sprint, I think 2-3 years back, you had to really explain what is AI. Nobody really knew how to use it and what it really was. And actually, with the shift to all the ChatGPT movement from 2 years back, now everybody knows about what AI is, although it's a very small piece of the Scala AI. But now they have much more intuition on what it could be. So you see a big shift into the generative AI, and that's where that's also their scope and their focus. So you also have to bring back in, wait, there are other technologies that we also call AI that you also need to consider in your solutions. Just forecasting, just classification, just all these more, is it classical now? Yeah, maybe classical machine learning tasks are also part of AI. So there's a big focus now on the generative and lingual part of AI. So that helps at least in the ramp up of the AI design sprint in understanding what is AI and where does it sit. But it's very limited only to generative. So that's a little bit the change that you see. First, you have to explain really what is the definition of AI. And now it's more, you have to explain it's more than just ChatGPT.
Right, right.
And could you share some examples, case studies, success stories of AI concepts that came out of the AI design sprint and then you implemented with clients?
Well, an example that I have is maybe not the best example as a success story, but maybe also a challenge that people will recognize. So this was a client in the financial area, in the medical financial, so an insurance company, and they insure actually the bigger risks. So really medical risks that have a very high impact. This company is more an administrative organization. So there are a lot of processes that they could optimize using whatever technology, and AI was considered one of them. And the typical question that you get is, okay, can you help us find the use cases? And say, yeah, of course. And we proposed AI design sprint. But there's where the but comes in. We have only half a day. So this is really, I think, also, and that's why I choose the example. This is really a challenge that you will see nowadays. People don't have that much time. They don't want to spend much time. And so I stepped into this trap, of course, and I said, okay, we can redesign a little bit on the approach and can see what can we achieve in half a day. So what is the objective and what is the process? So we need the framing beforehand. So finding out what is the core process that we want to optimize. So after a few iterations, we had that process already lined out. I said, okay, let's narrow down on the AI categories because not everything was relevant. So we could also downsize that time a little bit. And I had prepared the whole session. The moment we started the workshop, the process validation already turned out to be more than 5 minutes. It was just an hour or maybe an hour and a half because nobody really knew exactly how the process worked, but they also thought it was completely different. So that was also directly a learning on my side. This is something not really what you want to have at the start of the workshop. But the main objective there was we want to have at least an overview of what is the potential in to be optimized by AI and what are our next steps. So very practical things. So what I did is actually I skipped a little bit from the process in time. I ran over it by explaining what are the different topics that you have and what should be discussed. And I marked them as action items for later. So in the end, I made sure that at least we have clear what steps in the process were eligible for optimization. Quick scan on, okay, maybe are some ethical aspects here? No, well, we had limited ethical aspects because it was very administrative and business to business. So that helped a lot. And then I started to make them think about, okay, what kind of data and how do we measure the outcome? What is relevant in the process? So I asked a lot of questions. And actually, instead of just answering and brainstorming with the group directly, we marked a few of these items and put them as to do things afterwards. So in the end, we did a very quick run over the whole concept design phase, but there are a lot of action items in the end. So that is how I tried to squeeze down a little bit the process to help them at least getting a feeling of how AI design sprint could help, but also to make sure that they have some actual action items that they could pick up about data readiness and which people to use and how do we measure the result and the effect, what could be the benefit, some high level things. So that use case was very small. We had already the process. They were happy that we had an outcome. That helped a lot. However, afterwards, it turned out they didn't pick up. And maybe that's also a lesson learned. And one of the concerns I have with workshops in general is the commitment that you have on the project. So you have a very nice day, maybe 1 day or 2 days or half a day in my case. Then everybody's enjoying it. And afterwards, they were really happy. I also did the reporting on it. They were really happy with that. But the commitment to follow up and really pick up the actions, that is very hard. And a lesson learned on my side was, of course, double check with more people in the organization about the process beforehand. Because if you have a document or the manager is saying, this is my process, it might not be the actual process that is implemented. Because there are a lot of deviations from the documentation and the actual world. And that will consume a lot of time. But one of the things that I learned as well in this process was to sub-select the AI categories. So that also changed my mind a little bit in terms of how to use the AI design sprint. I was thinking more about as like a menu, and you can just pick and choose from it and mix and match. However, there are critical elements that you need to address always, but you can make them bigger and smaller if you want, and also tailor to the organization or the use case that you have at hand. So that helped me a lot to also be agile in the approach itself, and also think about which type of project and approach do you need from the AI design sprint. So so there was an outcome. We did do a very small AI design sprint session here, but I thought this might be a good example, and maybe people recognize as well that there is a challenge on time. There's a challenge on the topics. There's a challenge on commitment as well. And what I saw in this project, but also realized and learned from it. So I thought that might be maybe a good example to tell you.
Yeah, you touched on many of the challenges with facilitating implementation. How about the mindset? How people view AI when you start and after? How is that? The before and after?
Well, there were still people very critical about AI. So we had also some discussions about the topic itself. This was actually a use case or the workshop happened before ChatGPT was actually in the world. So this is the world that we had to really explain what AI is, and that people were really scared about technology hidden somewhere else, doing something for you, making decisions. So that's actually the context. So still we had some people being critical about AI as a methodology. In this use case, I saw that people were also happy that they could be helped with an automation step in their process, because there's a lot of the example was you have a lot of profiles or the dossiers that you need to match. So a lot of documentation is coming in. So this is a lot of manual work that they had to do. And if you can automate that with AI, they were really helped. So from that perspective, they were happy. The technology itself, some were really happy, some were not so happy, and that's still the case. You see it nowadays as well with generative AI. It's the same. People are very skeptical about the quality, and I really like that situation, because that is the moment that you can have a discussion and interaction with all your end users about what is their concern, what is making them think about the technology the way they do, and how can we explain much more. And I'm from a more technical background there, so I can also help to understand what technology is really doing. And that's a little bit my concern with AI in general. It's marketed as a very conceptual, functional stuff, and gets a lot of human aspects addressed. But to be honest, it's technology, it's statistics, it's machine learning. And that is making a change in the mind shift of that you require with business. So the moment that you think about AI, so the functional things in the AI design sprint, AI is reading, AI is listening, AI is generating. That's great for the solution design. But in AI literacy, I really want the organization also to understand AI is not a human. AI is statistics. Picking the ChatGPT is just generating text in the structure that we know. That's called grammar. And it has learned grammar at scale. And that's why it's good. But it doesn't understand the concepts that we are talking about. That means that you really need to address these topics, like check the quality of the model, check the outcome. And if you think about AI in this way, there's a different perspective than just relying on it as a human. So I think that is a little bit the nuance that we need in AI. And that's what I like in the discussion, because the moment you have this discussion with people, they start to realizing, okay, we need to see it at a different, from a different angle and approach it from a different way. It's not my black box and it solves all my problems. Especially when you don't give context. That's also very interesting. They expect a lot from AI. And that's also what you need to take away. You have to collaborate with AI. And I think that is where the value really lies.
Can you maybe also share? Can you also share maybe an example of where a client then, where the project didn't stop, but you did an AI design sprint and then actually something, you went to a prototype and you built, and at the end there's an implemented solution. Do you have an example for that?
I have not the real example where we had the full flow from AI design sprint to the concept, but I have also an example where we have implemented solutions because we all, kind of did the design sprint very small, like just brainstorming and not really following the AI design sprint. And that's where the client was also involved with the solutioning of the AI concept, but also involved in the delivery and the piloting of the solution. So because of this collaboration, there was a lot of involvement, which means that they understand the discussions that we had about directions to choose, the technologies to choose, difficulties with technologies. And that made them also aware about the capabilities that we could deliver, and also got them in the right perspective for piloting the solution. And you got a lot of other different feedback then. We know that it's not working like this, but can we do? And so thinking in the possibilities. So the key word is always collaboration with the client. And that's what I like in the AI design sprint, at the forefront, that you have the thinking and the design the design creation of the solution, but also in the evaluation, not only the assessment of the concept, but also the technical assessment and the delivery. You always need to have the client involved. Else it just gets a technology product that you push forward. So I'm always focused on the collaboration between the teams.
Yeah, super fantastic. Yeah.
And you became an AI strategist, right? So could you provide tips for other consultants on how to effectively help their clients with AI?
One of the approaches I have is I will say, I downplay AI, because it's hyped a lot, and people that you talk to might not be at that level of understanding of what AI is doing. There might be a very small company, but they might be in a completely different area. Downplay the AI technology, because then you make it real. What is actually happening in these machines? What's actually happening in the cloud? What data is really used, and how do you really need to look at AI? It's not magic. It's now marketed as a very magical thing. And of course, the results that we see online are really great. So stunning results that you can't imagine before, but still, the background is still technology. And if you understand that aspect, I think that helps a lot in getting people on board on what the technology can do. Other topics that I really would encourage others people to pick up is, of course, the ethical part around it. Don't leave it behind. It's very important. Technology is there. You can just use. You can just maybe drag and drop it if you want. It's about the implementation, and then the ethical aspect is very, very important. What is the core process that you focus on? What are the data that you're using? Which ethical questions can you have? But also, how do you make them explicit? Can you measure? Can you monitor? And not only conceptually, but also technically, during your development process, during your assessment, during the implementation. Always monitor what you're doing and measuring not only the value that you want to create, of course, that's very important, but also measuring other quality aspects like ethics, transparency, fairness, the bias, model drift. All these aspects are very relevant and important. But that's on the technical part. On the business side, I think you should emphasize that legal compliance risks are very important to address upfront, and also to help them think about how they can manage it from a business perspective, or also what they should do to manage it when it's in production, or what tools are available. They might not know that there are some tools that can help them, for example. So you need to bridge those gaps. And if you don't have a framework or you don't have that, just address it on your roadmap. It's in parallel of the technical development. Compliance, risk, legal parts are also in need of developing AI tailored solutions. That can be a process, that can be a framework, that can be a tool, that can be a guideline, but involve them. And I think these are the aspects that you nowadays see addressed in the public, but not really addressed in a technical way, because most people develop AI from an engineering perspective, which is great, but we have a lot of business implementation aspects that you need to address. So that would be a few of my tips that I can give other people to pick up this, or focusing on the strategy. So not only focusing on the technology strategy, so not creating just an IT roadmap and having all these projects on the roadmap, but also put your enablers on the roadmap. And I think business part is very important there.
Yeah. So AI is a tool that we can use to solve problems and make our lives easier. But, as any tool, we need to figure out how to use it for good, for our benefit. How do you see the next couple of years in AI? Do you have any ideas on that?
That's a long outlook years in AI. It changes that.
Let's say the
that's
next
fast.
year.
Yeah. Now, what I assume will happen is that there's now a lot of diversity in AI, and it's focusing on generative AI and especially language models. I think that this will converge into much more smaller use cases and applications, and that will be more stabilized. So now we see kind of the hype. Everything is AI, and we will realize that not everything will be AI, but it will be a great enabler and for us. So this will converge. What I hope that will change, and I think that's where the focus is on the footprint and the computation scalability, so that we get smaller models that are more effective, so people can use it on device in any use case they want, but also that we need less power and less infrastructure for it. And the reason for that is not only from a sustainability perspective, but also from an implementation perspective. If you look at the best capable platforms at the moment, they are actually in reach for the bigger companies. And there are a lot of smaller companies, mid-size and small-size companies, that don't have the budget to have a Microsoft or a Google or an Amazon subscription, for example. That means that they can't steer where the solution is located. And if you look at Europe, we have the GDPR. Most of these companies need to be compliant with GDPR. But if you can't choose where the region is where your model runs, that can be a challenge. So technology needs to be at scale also for smaller companies. And the moment that we can bring it in reach, AI, for these companies, I think then we get a real boost in the usage of AI. And now it's much more on the top side of the organization, the bigger companies. But the moment we can make it available for smaller companies, I think then you will see a really boost in the usage and the adoption in general of AI. And that is more adoption than that we have now on iPhones or Androids, where it's just a tool baked in your device. It becomes then a technology that people really can use themselves and apply. Like using what we did before with Excel. You can do your own calculations. You can manage your own numbers. AI will be the Excel of the future. it's a technology that people need to be capable of doing, but we need to also make it available to them. And that's where I see the biggest challenge right now. And that's what I hope for the next few years, that it becomes in reach for smaller companies.
So if you can think of who would be maybe a good company or industry to approach with the AI design sprint, or what would be, so if you think like what would be the maybe kind of the next company organization you would like to approach and help them with the AI design sprint?
And that's a great question. I would say that maybe organizations in the public domain, government and public domain, would be really great. And the reason is that we have seen a lot of examples of governments and that have implemented technology in a way that we later regret it. And I think it might be good. And the impact of what they implement is very, very big. Their impact is great. The whole company, maybe the whole Europe, maybe the whole world, if they want. So I think that thinking about AI implementations and what is the potential, but also what can be the impact, is very relevant for these types of organization. And they typically don't have a big AI innovation department or teams. They hire a lot of other organizations. And I do see also that this is very commercial driven, which means just put in a lot of people or sell my product. But I think that governments as an organization should also be aware of the potential and be knowledgeable about AI and design their own solutions. That's what their mindset is. That's where the core process is. How to either facilitate people, help people, or maybe foster certain things. They are responsible, so they need to also think in AI terms and not buy the solutions only. So from a general perspective, I think that might be an industry that should be targeted with an AI design sprint approach to really think from their core mindset into what can AI do to support them without the risk. So also address the risk where things can fail and where the impact is really huge. It's also a risky domain directly with that, but I think that the impact is big, and I think much bigger than just a few technology companies with a new solution. These are also fine, but they don't bring that impact and don't change the way of thinking we maybe need with all the companies and people around it.
Yes, great.
Do you have any last remarks, Wido?
Well, I still like the AI design sprint as it is, and the world has changed since I got trained in it. So it's always adjusting, but you can also reuse it. So the agility of the process is what helps me. So I think people should use this kind of approach to help others think about their solutions, to think about what is possible and what not, but also address the relevant topics around AI. So I really would encourage people to use an AI design sprint approach in some way, and that's also what I take in my talks with others. I think about the different steps, maybe not complete process, but different aspects that you can highlight that help people think about how the solution can help in their way.
Thank you so much, Wido, for joining Mike and I today and sharing your insights.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the AI Playbook with 33A. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.